Okay, I am live. I guess I should turn a light on so you can see me. Not that I look that great, but I guess it helps to see the person you're listening to. And I'm doing a first time ever a double live feed. I am live on my original channel, which is called Flux 369. It's a channel that I can only access on my computer for some strange reason. Google, YouTube just made it impossible for me to do any kind of posting videos anymore on that channel. So I gave that up a couple years ago. But apparently they still allow me to do a live feed. So I do one occasionally. I'm doing one today. So I'll be looking maybe at the camera a little bit, but mostly I'm going to be reading to start off. And I'm doing the other live feed on my current channel, which is called Normalcy, Normalsee. If you're on Flux 369 watching this, you may want to, if you're interested, you may want to check out my other channel, Normalcy. I have a little cold today, a little congestion, so hopefully it won't be a problem. I'll be able to talk for just a little while. And I'm going to do a little reading to start off from a book, and it's by the author H.L. Mencken. And he was an American writer, critic, pundit, maybe you might call him, observer of society. And this is a book called H.L. Mencken on Music. And he was a very much a lover of classical music. He was not too much into the popular music of the day, which was jazz. And well, I wonder what he would think about the music today. You know, I have my own opinions. I'm sure you have your own. And I don't know if you're a music lover or not, but I consider myself a music lover of sorts. And I don't really play any instruments with any proficiency. And I do make a feeble attempt at trying to sing once in a while on a karaoke type thing. And listen, the comments that may be coming in, if any, and I see a couple here, I'm not going to respond to any negative comments, people that are making accusations to me being this or that. If they're ugly, derogatory, defamatory, and insulting comments, I'm just going to accept that you're coming from a place of negativity for whatever reason, where you might think it's warranted, but I'm just not going to respond to anything negative. Okay, I'm not going to go there. But so I'll maybe check back on the comments at the very end and see if there are any decent, neutral, or positive comments, anything worthwhile responding to. But if all they are just insults, then stop watching right now. There's no need for you to waste your time. Okay, so here I'm going to read a couple pages here called The Music Lover. This was first printed back in 1919, so over 100 years ago. So none of us were alive then, I don't think. Anyway, starts off. Of all forms of the uplift, perhaps the most futile is that which addresses itself to educating the proletariat in music. The theory behind it is that a taste for music is an elevating passion, and that if the great masses of the plain people could only be inoculated with it, they would cease to herd into the moving picture parlors, that's movie theaters, or to listen to demagogues, which we have a couple today, Trump and Harris, the biggest ones I know of, or to beat their wives and children, which that goes on today too quite a bit, I'm sad to say, but I'm sure it does. The defect in this theory lies in the fact that such a taste, granting it to be elevating, which, pointing to professional musicians, I certainly deny, simply cannot be implanted. Either it is born in a man or it is not born in him or woman. If it is, then he will get gratification from it at whatever cost. He will hear music if hell freezes over. But if it isn't, then no amount of education will ever change him. He will remain indifferent until the last sad scene on the gallows. No child who has had this congenital taste has ever had to be urged or tempted or taught to love music. It takes to tone inevitably and irresistibly. Nothing can restrain it. Isn't that wonderful what he says about children? I agree. What is more, it always tries to make music, for the delight in sounds is invariably accompanied by a great desire to produce them. All genuine music lovers try to make music. They may do it badly and even absurdly, that's me, but nevertheless they do it. Any man who pretends to cherish the tone art and yet has never learned the scale of C major, any and every such man is a fraud. The opera houses of the world are crowded with such liars. You will even find hundreds of them in the concert halls, though here the suffering they have to undergo to keep up their pretense is almost too much for them to bear. Many of them, true enough, deceive themselves. They are honest in the sense that they credit their own bunkum, but it is bunkin nonetheless. I had to look that word up, bunkin, Buncombe, and that means just talking to hear yourself talk, talking to try to be popular, just blah, 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 which pretty rampant on social media today, and I'm as guilty as anybody of doing that at times. In the United States, the number of genuine music lovers is probably very low. There are whole states, for example, Alabama, Arkansas, and Idaho, in which it would be difficult to muster 100. In New York, I venture, not more than one person in every 1,000 of the population deserves to be counted. The rest are, to all intents and purposes, tone deaf. They can not only sit through the infernal din made by the current jazz bands, they actually like it. And isn't it funny today, jazz is considered a great art form, American art form. And I love jazz. If you do, good for you too. This is precisely as if they preferred the works of the Duchess to those of Thomas Hardy or the paintings of the men who make covers for the magazines to those of El Greco. Such persons inhabit the sewers of the Beaux-Arts. No conceivable education could get rid of them of their native infirmity. They are born incurable. So you can see he was quite a bit of a pessimist, you might say, or had a sardonic wit and style about elevating himself as an elite, probably, that most people are just don't comprehend what great music really is. Of course, he loved classical music, and he championed Beethoven and Schubert and many of the great classical composers, as we call them today. And I can't argue with him on that. Classical music is a beautiful art form of music that I love as well, but I just don't play it as much as I do popular music today. So that's my little spiel on music. I just want to also add that I think social media, as we call it today, really, I'm trying to think of a better term for it. The best I've come up with is obtuse discourse, because it's not really good communication for the most part. Social media has become almost, I think, more destructive than constructive or positive for our society. Sure, it lends itself to everybody has a voice now, but it's just a cacophony now, a disturbance, a distortion of so many voices trying to, just like the comments I can see coming in here, who knows what you're saying. And everybody wants to talk at the same time and talk over each other and hurl insults. And of course, on the one that I use a little bit, Instagram, I see that all the time. There's a post and you feel the urge to go on there and say your comment, what you think. And sometimes I'll type quite a few paragraphs, and sometimes it's one or two lines like most people do. And maybe people are hoping they're going to get likes and other comments back. And, and that's what goes on. And that's sure the same thing on Twitter. I don't know about TikTok. I guess it's like that on Facebook too. And YouTube, it's like that as well. People can make comments and other people can say, oh, damn it, you're wrong as hell. And then start coming back with a lot of words and harsh attacks. Or sometimes they come on and I agree with you, brother or sister. You're right on. I agree with your political view, your religious view, your view about society, about music, about that film, about people in general, anything. And it's a wonderful capability we have electronically to be able to do this instantaneously around the world with people in India and Vietnam and South America and Europe and the United States and Canada and Mexico, all people connecting in a way that Marshall McLuhan talked about, this global village we have today. The world is still a very big place for us humans, but it's shrunk immeasurably with electronic media now that we can communicate across vast distances instantly, basically at the speed of light. which is not the fastest speed in the universe, by the way. But that's another topic for another day. So now let me get away from that just for a moment. Talk about one more thing about God. There's a great book by Norman Mailer, a great author. And I haven't read the whole book all the way, but it's a nonfiction book where he is interviewed by another gentleman, and he talks a lot about his views about God. It is a good book. The part I've read so far is very good. And Mailer is not a deeply religious man, but yet he does have his own concepts of God and what it is. And so do I, and probably so do you, whether you believe in God or don't believe in God. Either way, you have some concept of it. And he talks also in the book about the devil, what the devil is. And many people have their own ideas about Satan and the devil and Lucifer from the Christian perspective. And I'm sure in Islam and Judaism and in the Hindu, they all have their ideas about that too, of evil and good. But Mailer believes that the devil maybe is simply technology. Or technology, I should say, is the devil's wedge. The devil has technology as the wedge to creep his way into dividing people or separating people, let's say, from their own essence and spirituality, and have them go into this realm of materialism, consumerism, the need to have things, acquire things, elevate our egos, our status, our self-importance with ownership of a lot of things, to utilize the technology, whether it's a speedy car, a boat, a computer, a cell phone, or any kind of device, any kind of technology. And millions of examples you could probably come up with about what is technology, from the original wedge, the device that the Egyptians used to make the pyramids, unless you believe aliens were involved. Again, that's another topic for another day. But I just want to say on the topic of God about atheism, I don't believe most atheists, I can't speak for all atheists, but a lot of atheists, I'm pretty sure, don't believe that there's nothing, no force or intelligence or energy or something that made everything come into existence. I think that's pretty obvious that we're not big-brained enough to even comprehend some intelligence or force or power that emanated everything, brought everything into existence. There had to be some cause, right? Even science says there's cause and then there's effect. You don't get an effect without a cause. But what atheists largely are against is this notion of a parental God, which is what most religions subscribe to. In other words, the Christian God, which is the faith I'm most familiar with, because I was raised in that context as religious, as a Southern Baptist, is that God is more or less like Santa Claus. Okay, God's sitting up there, he's got a little book, whatever, however you look at it. God is keeping track of your behavior, just like Santa Claus, we were told. He's checking off whether you've been good, naughty, or nice. And in the end, there's going to be a reckoning. There's going to be Judgment Day, and God's going to come down and say, you've been very bad. You didn't do as, I instructed through the interpretation of many different thousands of people of the Holy Bible, 20,000 various different denominations and interpretations of what scriptures in the Bible mean, written down by ancient men we don't know, 2,000 or more years ago, in ancient languages that have been translated many times into other languages and now interpreted, and people seek great meaning out of this book and interpret it to mean certain things. Of course, that's all well and fine if you want to go along with all that. But the notion that God is some kind of parental figure that actually listening to you, listening to your prayers and answering them, okay, that is pretty naive and pretty childish and pretty silly. And I think that's where most atheists are coming from when they don't subscribe to religion. And I'm certainly in that camp. I don't subscribe to any religion as being valid. If you do, then good for you. That is fine. I'm not attempting to try to tell you you shouldn't believe it or that you're wrong or anything of that nature. I am just simply sharing my personal perspective and point of view. A lot of people agree with me. A lot of people don't. The majority of people seem to be on board with some kind of religion, but whether they actually practice that religion or are more or less hypocrites who say one thing and say they believe one thing, but actually act differently. I think that's more the case with the majority of people that claim to be religious or say they're religious. At least that's been my observation, it's been my experience throughout my life. So, yeah, I gave up the notion of believing in this phony, false religion when I was about 10 years old. A 10-year-old child, I had enough awareness and intelligence to figure out none of this stuff can be true. Even though the adults were telling me, oh, yeah, it all happened. It's in the Bible. It has to be true. And I think the sooner people start to wake up and mature and recognize that's just the craziest thing to believe in God in that way, and look at it in a different way, as quantum physicists now have informed us, there is a oneness to everything. This is right in alignment with spiritual teaching that predates Christianity, Judaism, Islam by hundreds, if not thousands of years, going back to the Vedas, an ancient Indian religion that eventually became Hinduism. And that there is a one God, and that God is everything and has not only created everything, but continues to create everything through us. We are living embodiment and co-creators of this Godhead, God awareness, God source. So when we align with this oneness in everything, we see oneness in everything and in everybody, including the tiniest little organism, a plant, insect, animal, human beings, of course. When we connect with this oneness in our day-to-day activities and actions and behavior and thoughts, then we are experiencing God in the ultimate way. When we experience joy in our life and appreciation for being alive and our ability to create in a creative way, we are able to. When we're able to give appreciation, experience gratitude, complete gratitude for the fact that we were born of a mother and father. However that came about, it's different for everybody. But we were conceived somehow, and our mother gave birth to us, and in many cases nurtured and raised us. Not everyone, but many cases that was what happened. And we're here today now as functioning people, young people, teenagers, middle-aged, old people, whatever you are. And I think maintaining that feeling of gratitude, it's difficult. I don't know that you can do it all day long, 100% of the time, but reflecting on that with gratitude for our life and everything, the abundance of what we have in our life, the good, the bad, the ugly, however you want to view your life. Some people have better lives than others. You know, it's not all about materialism and money, but it's been said that it's easier to be happy in life when you have money. I suppose there's some truth in that. But it's also been proven through many, many studies and surveys that people who are poor have can develop a large degree of happiness and joy without having to be rich. They find their own humanity through their own sense of whatever they conceive to be humanity and their connection with a higher power or a God. And if that comes about through a religious belief or practice, I am not faulting anybody. I'm not telling you you're wrong to do that. I'm not saying that's invalid. I'm saying fine. But I'm saying if you look at the bigger picture of the whole thing of how it works, that may be very limiting. It may be very limiting. There may be a more expansive way to view it all. And if you have an open mind to that possibility, then that's great. If you don't, then keep on trucking with what you're doing. Okay, and now my last closing comment I'll make about voting. I've said this before on my live feed and on my videos. I'm not voting this year. I'm not participating in a corrupt, evil system that has been going on for a very long time in the United States of America, for 250 years. They've been parading around men, mostly, and now women a little bit, as the so-called figurehead leader of a political party that wants to be the head of government, of the executive branch of our government, to make important decisions that affect many people in the world, not just Americans themselves, but people around the world and other countries too. This year, we're being given a choice, not really a choice, it's an ultimatum. Just like Russian roulette, they put the gun to your head and they got a bullet in the chamber, and that's called the game Russian roulette. And that's an ultimatum. That's not giving you a choice. That's what we're being given this year an ultimatum that you can cast your ballot for Kamala Harris, the Democrat candidate, or Donald Trump, the Republican candidate. And half the country thinks Trump is going to make the country better, and they hate Kamala Harris. And half the country thinks Kamala Harris will make the country better, and they hate Donald Trump. More or less. I'm exaggerating, but that's more or less how it is right now. And we see the polls every day, and they tell us it's 50-50. It's going to be close. And a lot of people think if Donald Trump gets elected, oh, God is going to be on our side because God's on Trump's side. It's all going to be better. A lot of the Democratic supporters think if Kamala Harris gets in, she's going to fix the abortion issue and take away the guns, and it's all going to be better. And I got news for you folks. And I'm not a genius, but I'm smart enough to figure this out. It's not going to get better with either one of these characters as the head of the government. It's not going to get better. In fact, it's very likely going to get worse. And I say that facetiously because how much worse can it get than it already is right now? With a sleepyhead Joe Biden who has dementia in charge of the government right now, he's not really doing much. There's other people behind the scenes. And of course, that'll be true of Trump and Harris too. They have many, many advisors, and their network of people that are feeding them information about this and that and what's going on and what you need to do today and what you need to sign and how you're going to say it. They write the speeches for them more or less. Trump, I think, less so than Harris. Trump just talks off the cuff many times, whatever seems to be coming into that brain of his. And it's scary. But you know what? I've endured some very bad situations in America before. The politics of the 60s, the assassinations, the Vietnam War, and then, Watergate. And that's ancient history for a lot of you. You may not even know much about it. But there's been many things since then. The Reagan years were the beginning of feeding all the wealth more up to the top, to the rich, and screw the middle class. And then the Clinton years where we started experiencing a little bit of an economy taking off with the coming of the internet and computers, home computers and all that. And then the 2000s, 9/11, and then the Afghan wars, the Iraq wars, and now the banking debacle in 2008, where all the banks ripped the country off to the tune of $1 trillion that caused inflation. Nobody went to jail because they protect the rich guys. They always have, they always will. The elites, that is. They're no more smart or better than you and I. Trump and Kamala Harris are no more intelligent or better than you and I. I can say that again. They are no better than you and I. They are narcissistic people who had a lot of ambition and drive and a lot of help from their friends, both of them. And they had power aspirations and they raised themselves to levels of political power. Trump, more a businessman. Harris is a district attorney, prosecutor. But they both found their way now to this situation where they are the candidates for president, both claiming over and over, attacking the other one, saying they're the one to vote for. It's a lot like a Super Bowl mentality. That's football, for you that don't know. Cheering for your football team. I'm not saying it is the same thing, but in many ways, there's a parallel between the Super Bowl and this whole electoral thing we have going on. But I'm going to end on saying that if you continue voting for this system, you're voting to remain a slave to the system. We are essentially slaves. We are cattle. We are livestock, sheep. They see us that way, Trump and Harris both, and all their friends and supporters and advisors. They look down on us because they know they control us. They control us through the means of media, primarily. But they also have some law enforcement people on their side to rattle their sabers and say, if you don't behave, we're going to come get you. We'll put you in jail and you'll be incarcerated. And that will happen for sure. They can do that. They have the ability to take your money away, every paycheck, take a substantial amount of your money away, and we're going to use that money to serve you. Really? They're serving you, huh? By continuing endless wars, such as the war in Ukraine that was instigated, initiated, and provoked and continues by the United States of America government, started in 2014, 10 years ago. That would never be happening today if America had not been pushing their own agenda to keep encroaching more and more on the backyard of Russia, which is no longer a communist country, by the way, no longer seeking to dominate the world with an iron curtain and communism. That stopped over 30 years ago, folks. So why this continuing Cold War battle with Russia is beyond me. It's very political. These are power-hungry psychopaths, Harris and Trump and all their cronies and friends equally. They're power-hungry psychopaths that want to control you and me and all of us. And if you vote in this election and you say, well, I'm voting for the lesser of two evil, Ben, Harris is more evil, I'm voting for Trump. No, Trump's more evil, I'm voting for Harris. No, you're voting for evil. Either way, you're voting for evil. If you vote for evil, you're supporting an evil system. You're participating in your own demise, your own self-destruction, ultimately. Because that day is coming where the United States of America is not going to be whatever you consider a free democracy, and we're not a free democracy anyway. And even if we were, it wouldn't be a good thing. But we're not. This is becoming closer to communism every day, totalitarian government overreach into your life, with surveillance on everything you do and say. And just like Santa Claus or Jesus or God or whatever you want to look at it, the government is way, way worse in that respect, because they're not just making you some idle promise of what's going to happen in the end. They're going to come down and take care of business today, tomorrow, next week, very soon. So it's something for you younger people to think about, what kind of world you want to be living in the next 10, 20, 30, 50, 80 years, however long you might expect to be alive. And you've got things like climate change, which, of course, I'm not even going to touch that one today. That's a very hot topic today. Many people have different opinions about what we ought to be doing for the effects of climate change, which you can see the effects, accelerated extreme weather events happening, not everywhere all at once yet, but happening plenty across the board around the world. And it's a main story every night whenever I glance at it occasionally, just to see what the masses are looking at on the network TV news at night. It's all propaganda. Fox, ABC, CNN, all propaganda. But they are reporting some things that are going on, truthfully, I suppose. And that has to do with the weather mostly, where there's not much they can do to really they can put a spin on that too, and they do, obviously. But more or less, they are telling you what's happening with massive wildfires, with tornadoes and hurricanes, with earthquakes. It's a news story every freaking night. Have you noticed that? And those of you that watch TV news, it's a news story every night. I don't see a lot of it on social media. Well, I do see some. The terrible typhoon in Vietnam, there's been a lot on Instagram about that. And so basically, I want to say, if you're voting for evil. Now, you say, what's the other option? To not vote? Yes, I'm saying don't vote. Don't participate in an evil system. Now, right now, there's probably a certain number of people that are not going to vote in this election, most of them just out of apathy. They just really don't care. They're too involved with their day-to-day stress, their jobs, their obligations, and they're just not paying attention. They just really don't care. That's not my position. My position is I'm very interested in what's going on as an observer, but I know myself, all I can do is be a voice here in the wilderness on this social media thing called YouTube to try and share some ideas with some of you. And if you want to look into it further, there are some solutions and answers to what we can do about it. But I don't have enough time to go into all that today. And I don't have all the answers, no, and I'm not pretending I do. But we definitely have to work towards a day where we have a healthy anarchy, not anarchy where we're setting off bombs and chaos and looting and rioting and murdering. That's not what true anarchy is. True anarchy means no ruling class. We no longer have a king, an emperor. We no longer have a president, a governor, a premier, a prime minister. We no longer have these leaders making all the decisions about our life, taking our money, calling it taxes, telling us it's for our own good when it's absolutely not. And they're using it for nefarious, insidious, evil purposes, including war on other countries, murdering innocent people, all the time. Collateral damage. Don't worry about it. It happens. Really? Is that a Christian thing? Is that moral? To murder innocent people in the name of your own government, your own national security, as if that's somehow protecting people from attacking the United States? Oh, remember 9/11, Ben? Yeah, 9/11. Our leaders knew about 9/11 attack. They knew full well about it in advance. Cheney, Rumsfeld, Bush, and all their cronies, they knew 9/11 was coming. They wanted it to happen. They needed it to happen to garner support for their invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. This was all premeditated and planned. And if you don't think everything politically in the news is planned and orchestrated, then you're asleep. Nothing happens by accident. It's all planned. And it's planned to keep you subservient as a slave and ignorant and dumbed down and believing in this process of an election that it matters. So it doesn't really matter to me. I'll sit back and watch. I'll burn my ballot and I'll watch the election play out. And whoever wins, wins. And whoever loses, loses. The biggest loser is going to be all of you, the American public, and the people around the world, because we will have a new figurehead puppet who is about as demented and psychotic and evil as any I've ever seen in my lifetime. It just keeps getting worse. So hopefully you're not too depressed from this news. If you disagree with all of it, fine, good for you. I don't really care either way what anybody thinks about anything I've said, but I'm getting this off my chest because I know it's important for people like myself to keep putting out this word that all is not what it seems to be. We've been living in an illusory world, and it's been that way since the beginning. And it's time for us finally, in this great age of awakening, and not to get off path, not to get run into the ditch here with our egos, to continue to be open-minded and lucid and clear about what we really want. If we really want freedom, that's something we're going to have to stand up and own it, that we are free people. Don't expect your government to give you freedom and tell you, oh, our troops, support the troops, they're fighting for your freedom. That is nonsense. That's a lie. That is not where you're going to get freedom. You're going to have to get freedom by demanding it and owning it yourself. Okay, so that's all I got. Let me look at these comments, see if there's even a couple worth responding to. Looks like there's quite a few. Boy, I'm surprised to get so many people here. But let's see. Oh, I don't know. There's too many here really that I need to answer. I appreciate any of you that felt you needed to make a comment instead of actually maybe listening, but that's okay. You know, I just pretty much said what I had to say because it just came from my heart and from my gut and a little bit out of my brain also, which is still functional. I'm not senile yet, contrary to what some of you might think. But yeah, consciousness, Elliot Fire and Ice, it's fundamental to the universe. That's what I'm basically trying to say. The oneness, the unity, the consciousness that we're all a part of it in a way. If you want to say we're but we're not really separate. You understand? We're all one. We're all connected. So that's the paradox of it all. But I appreciate all you had to say. Oh, wow, from Afghanistan. And yes, thank you for your comment there. It's just, I just don't have enough time to really go in depth here. See, this is the problem with social media. It's just such an ephemeral thing. It's so short-lived. But honest to God, you know, I do appreciate everything. And whether you're on board with either party, political party, that is fine. I really, again, not concerned about it and don't care. And yeah, people have a lot of different opinions about Americans, and you know, you have every right to judge Americans. Yeah, I believe Jesus Christ was a real person who lived, and I think that's the most important part of the Christian Bible is the actual words and teachings of Jesus, not all these phony interpretations that preachers and religious people have come up with about it. Just read the words of Jesus, what he taught. There's a lot of value in that for sure. I don't get hung up on, he died for my sins on the cross. You must accept him as a savior. You must pray to him. No, I don't do that. But if you do, that's absolutely fine, of course. Nothing I can say about that. Um, yeah, the problems, we all have our perceptions about what the problems are. And that's just human nature to think that we can fix all these problems. But collectively, we have to start working together, cooperating with each other, stop the divisiveness. This is another thing I'll say quickly. The higher ups, the elites, they want us to hate each other. You understand that? They want us to be divided. This is how they conquer and control us. So when we stop this divisiveness and start listening to each other a little bit and trying to find some common ground, we've got a much better chance to one day overtake the system. We have a lot more numbers than they do. We outnumber them 99% to 1%. And just say it, that's a fact. I mean, I'm not just making that up. You think about that a little bit. Yeah, you don't demand your freedom, my friend, there, Joanna, but you own your freedom. I am a free person. I have certain things I have to go along with that the government makes me do, and I'd be stupid not to do it. To go out without a driver's license wouldn't be too smart, because if I get caught, they could put me in jail. Okay, so there's certain things I go along with. My taxes, I pay the taxes. I have not found a way yet to stop paying taxes. But if Trump or Harris really, really cared about you and your freedom, listen, the first thing they would do is tell you you don't have to pay your taxes. They give you a pardon for not paying taxes, because that would be freedom. You would then be free from the constraint of the government taking your money and spending on ways you probably don't approve of. You might approve of some of them, but I doubt you approve of 100% of how they spend your tax money. And most of your tax money now is going to pay, guess what? Interest on the national debt and the military. Those are two of the huge areas that the tax money goes for, and entitlements and giveaway programs to people who are poor. And it's all about keeping everybody poor and dependent on government. This guy, this Klaus guy in Germany and the World Economic Forum, he's a new totalitarian communist. He wants everybody to have nothing, to own nothing. That's communism. No ownership. Okay. So yeah, again, I see a lot of comments, some negative, some positive, a lot of Trump stuff on there. And, if you want to think I'm absolutely bonkers and wrong, you have every right to believe that and say that all you want. This goes on every day in social media, the obtuse discourse called social media, where people are not really listening and not really helping things. It's this divide and conquer. The higher ups like it, because the more we argue with each other, insult each other, and come up with stupid things to say over and over, the more we basically stay dumbed down and we stay slaves. And yes, there's been tremendous amount of genocide in this world. That's how this United States country was politically formed and geographically formed as a political country that it is today, is by the Western European invaders, my ancestors, I'm sorry to say. It's where I'm descended from. They came to this country and they just started butchering the Native Americans, who were living pretty well on the earth. They were primitive, but they didn't need Christianity. They were doing okay without it. And the Europeans came in and said, no, you got to become Christians or we're going to kill you. And we're just going to kill you anyway, whether you become Christian or not. We're killing you anyway because you're dark skinned, you look different, you're ignorant, we don't like you, we want your land. Oh, we don't own the land, sir. The land owns us. Well, we're taking it anyway because we own it now. That was the perspective of the Europeans. And it didn't take long, a little over 100, 200 years. They butchered almost all of them. 98% of the Native Americans gone, dead. It's our land now. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to end on that note there. And thank you, BG Gaming. I think I am saying the truth, at least the truth as I perceive it. And that could change tomorrow, but I don't think most of it will. And I wish you all well. I sincerely mean that. We're one. Let's be one, brothers and sisters. Let's develop oneness, okay? That is the way. Okay. You all be well. Take care of yourselves, your families, and your friends. Love and peace. Don't know how to end this.